President Buhari calls for political will in restoring 1 billion hectares of land by 2030 to save the planet.
Federal government emphasizes increased collaboration and integration of efforts to drive sustainable economic growth across African continent.
Minister of State for Power identifies gas constraints and vandalization of pipelines as factors in collapse of national grid.
On Good Morning Nigeria today is examining qualities of a good leader as we explore the concept of leadership.
Where there is no vision, the people perish ultimately. Now, that's a popular saying emphasizing the imperative of vision and purposeful leadership.
Indeed, Kingsley, not only that the vision, which ought to be for the good of all, must be well coordinated and processed into meeting the existing reality on ground, as well as the yearnings and aspirations of the people.
Now, to achieve that goal, the coordinator, who is certainly the leader, is expected to be capable and willing to mobilize relevant human and material resources for the purpose of bringing the vision to reality.
Now, bringing the axiom into Nigerian political system, it means that the nation requires a leader that knows the veracity of the nation's situation, define the existing realities, and be resolute about serving the populace with like-minded individuals.
Well, Kieran, there's no question about that. Leadership, of course, involves not just dealing with existing realities or issues, but also being forward-looking and indicating to say that in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years, this is where we would like to be. And that leader doesn't have to be in charge.
Exactly,
Yes.
but we've had a development plan, over time. And in fact, at different periods of, in our history, we've had the development plans. And the leaders we had within this period, perhaps were not able, to actualize, those plans in terms of implementation and what have you. I think that's what has, that's exactly the bane of the nation's national development.
And there are a number of factors responsible for the failure to actualize our dreams. Now, in continuation of yesterday's discussion on Good Morning Nigeria, where guests examined the concept of leadership, they agreed that citizens also require value reorientation on the choice of leaders, because people naturally buy into a political leader before they, of course, get ahead with doing other issues that arise from the leaders' perspectives as well as programs of action. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll be exploring further the qualities of a good political leader, the one who is capable of fixing not just the nation's economy, but the subnational challenges that the country has. And those challenges include political and social matters.
We'll also beam our searchlight on the qualities of a good leader in any political context in the bid to sensitize the people on what to look out for in moving the nation forward. And united as the people look forward to 2023 general elections. I am Kirian Umayo, welcoming you to another edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program, in the course of which we have our regular complimentary segments. This is a newspaper review and business. And of course, we will be taking a look at those issues in our conversation segment. For now, here is Frama Panye, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Frama.
Good morning and thank you. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says for humanity to be saved from starvation and planet preserved for future generations, the international community must demonstrate enough political will and commitment towards restoring 1 billion hectares of land by 2030. Speaking at the 15th conference of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification in Abuja, Cote d'Ivoire, the president, however, warned that without a peaceful world, the problems of drought and desertification can be tackled effectively.
Fully on board. We also had, virtual interventions by the President Macron of France and the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, and also the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, shared their experiences on, the steps that they were all taking to fight desertification and desert encroachment. Mr. President also just looked at the global economic challenges in that context and talked about the importance of also recharging Lake Chad. The key thing is really the political will and, investing then the money needed, the coordination and the policy steps that are needed.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says it is clear that the post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy for Africa must go beyond the individual efforts that are made in different countries. He emphasizes the need for increased collaboration and integration of efforts to drive sustainable economic growth across the African continent. This was when the Vice President represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the opening of the first Conference of Speakers and Heads of African Parliaments.
The sustainable post-COVID economic recovery is laden with much responsibility for our governments. All hands must be on deck to ensure that Africa rises from the impact of the pandemic to even greater heights. We must build strong collaborative partnerships across the aisles in our parliaments, with our judiciary, to the executive, with the private sector, and civil society. And if we learned anything at all from COVID-19 and its aftermath, it is that no nation, no institution, no group, no individual can succeed alone.
Speakers and heads of Africa parliaments are in Abuja to strategize on issues of common concern. Top on the agenda is how to shake off the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic, which is a major drawback for most countries in Africa. Enhancing Africa's post-COVID economic recovery through parliamentary leadership is the theme of the conference initiated by the Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila.
Yet there is no gainsaying that we are far from achieving the highest potential that we are able to.
Unfair global economic system. Africa is rich, but poor. We have everything, yet we have nothing.
The issue of debt relief is an important one, and it's central to the economic policies and practices of our African government.
The Minister of State for Power, Godi Jedi Agba, said issues of gas constraints, vandalism of gas pipelines, transmission towers and lines are responsible for reoccurring collapses of the national grid. The minister was at the National Assembly to brief the Senate Committee on Power on the state of Nigeria's national grid.
Has continued to pump in money. Why are we still where we are? Issues of right of way across various states of the Federation. Recently, we raised this issue with the Governors Forum.
If it means the federal government needs to go back to the subsidy issue, which was the federal government intervention, which has been stopped.
Between 3,000 and 4,000 megawatts per day. That's the average push card. Talk about that. It's a simple thing. Help us, please help us.
I want to put it on record that system collapse affects the GENCOs more than anybody in the value chain.
When we say alignment, what we are saying is that if you are able to generate 5,000 megawatts, we must be able to transmit 5,000 megawatts. We must be able to distribute 5,000 megawatts.
So in this regard, what the Commission is working on is effective 1st of July this year, we will partially activate some PPAs to the level of 5,000 megawatts. Now, that will guarantee that this is always available.
There is a need to have a multidimensional approach as to solve this issue.
Concerned by the insecurity challenges across several regions in the country, the armed forces of Nigeria have continued to evolve creative ways to strengthen its potentials in the fight against insurgency. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor, was addressing participants at the defense retreat in Asaba. Governor Ifeanyi Okowa was among those that unveiled the military strategy.
The integrated logistics strategy has also been developed and, of course, undergoing review. Similarly, the Joint Defense Doctrine is being reviewed and unbundled for ease of reference. I'm aware the services are all working on their respective doctrines and other regulatory documents to achieve a collective goal. It is, however, my ardent belief that the implementation of these strategies will not achieve the much needed goals if we do not open a less theoretical means of forging ahead.
Forces have continued to demonstrate uncommon patriotism, dedication, sacrifice, courage, and commitment towards ensuring a safe and secure nation for us all.
And the Nigeria Customs Service has disclosed that its officer involved in the assault of a civilian along Benin-Agbo Expressway, whose video has been trending on the social media, has withdrawn from patrol and currently under administrative investigation at its zonal headquarters, Zone C, Port Harcourt. The disclosure contained in a statement by the Public Relations Officer of the service, Timi Bomodi, states that officers of the service are properly trained in carrying out their duties with dignity, respect, and are expected to display decorum in their conduct at all times. The customs spokesperson also assures that the service is committed to the welfare and safety of citizens and will always frown at any act by its personnel capable of misrepresenting its corporate image. President of the 9th Senate, Ahmad Lawan, is among the latest people that picked up the APC presidential nomination and expression of interest forms.
We know what we have been able to achieve as an administration and as a political party, and we know where we are supposed to take this level to eventually. I want to commit myself to this call and to this movement of Nigerians from all walks of life, rich, poor, north, south, east, west, male, female, old and young. This is not my journey. This is our journey.
That's the morning news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this time out. Please don't go away.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we are live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. It's time for business news, and our correspondent, Kunle Adeyeye, has the stories.
The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment is engaging stakeholders in the petroleum sector and the Ministry of Justice with a view to interpreting the role of weight and measures in the oil and gas sector amid the implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. Stakeholders say the synergy between the two ministries will further deepen accountability in the sector.
We are key to ensuring that trade, investment and technology policies serve as the core enablers of growth and the sustainable development of the Nigerian economy. using strains to achieve the broad national development objectives of structural transformation, industrialization, economic diversification, employment generation, and poverty alleviation.
And tradings on the floor of the Nigerian Group Exchange closed on a positive note on Monday, 9th May 2022, gaining 1.90% to close at 51,902.48 basis points, with market capitalization at 27.9 trillion naira. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you, Kunle, for the business package. Next on Good Morning Nigeria newspaper review.
All right, my colleague Kira and I will take the papers we have in turn and then have a conversation around some of the topics. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, petrol scarcity worsens in Abuja. NNPC, that's the rider, 2.5 billion liters in stock. So if you have it in stock, then it should be available at the pump heads. Sokoto and Zamfara failed to register pupils for WASC. That's on page 29. Varsities, polytechnics, and others get TED Funds Intervention Fund. You have details on page 8. Adamawa Hospital workers protest bad management. And then below the nameplate, families of kidnapped train passengers seek rescue of loved ones. And you can see the photograph there of some of the family members during a news conference on the plight of their family members in Abuja, and that took place yesterday. Strike extension. Students slam ASU and federal government. Protests in Lagos and Ekboma. Lead story, Jonathan. I didn't authorize group to obtain APC form. Buhari's and Jonathan's aides disagree. Lawan, Silva, Ayade pick forms. Court to rule on Emefiele's requests. And lastly, at the foot of the front page, Taraba community protest upgrade of 15 villages to districts. Kirian.
All right, let's take the Punch newspaper now. The Punch above the name flag. Jet A1 NNPC Airlines agree on 3-month supply at 480 naira per liter. That's the aviation fuel. It's on page 27. Refineries probe. Reps grill Silva carry today, say appearance compulsory. It's on page 31. Fuel queues persist in Abuja. Petrol sells for 300 naira per liter. It's on page 27. APC rules out imposition. Groups pick Jonathan allowance forms. That's on page 19. Nigeria others debt relief request, 650 billion US dollars loan at advanced stage, says the federal government. It's on page 28. Federal government's monthly debt servicing jumps to $101 million. That's according to CBN's report. It's on page 28. Now, the lead story on the Punch newspaper, presidential bid, INEC, CBN partnership under threat over Emefiele's APC membership. That's on page 2. 3 riders to that. Commission to review CBN's role may move ballot papers from bank's vault. CBN can't be trusted with sensitive materials under Emefiele. That's the MBA and the CSOs. No fear over Apex Bank's governor's presidential bid, ex-INEC commissioner says. All right, now the photo story on the Punch newspaper here, you could see the Save Abuja Kaduna train passengers. These are the family members of those who are still in captivity after that incident. Abducted train passengers' families seek government's intervention. That's the caption there. It's on page 9 of the Punch newspaper. 18 Plateau governorship aspirants threatened to dump APC, alleged imposition. It's on page 8. Federal government GSM operators to meet over 40% tariff hike. It's on page 28 of the Punch. Baptist president begs abductors to release Bethel student. On page 37. Tinubu Atiku lobby delegates promise to tackle nation's disunity. It's on page 9. Bauchi man strangles neighbor's daughter, buries corpse in kitchen, collects ransom. On pages 4 and 5. ASU strike. Students protest in Lagos, Benin, vow to storm National Assembly and airports. That's on page 8. Well, as we were taking on the headlines, the front pages of the two papers we have here this morning, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi, just joined us. And we just have to welcome Bayo.
Yeah, we'll welcome you, Bayo. But before we bring you in, there are two running stories.
Yes.
Often we refer to the fact that sometimes when matters are being prosecuted, we hardly get to see reports in the media. On page 4 of the Nation newspaper, there are two court stories, and I would like to draw attention to them. The headline for one, you can't see that on the headline on the screen right now. It says 310,000 naira rapture pastor arraigned in Ekiti. That's the Ekiti Police Command has arraigned Noah Abraham, a pastor widely reported to have demanded 310,000 naira from his church members for rapture. That's taking place in Ekiti State. Then we all recall the story of a 22-year-old passenger, Oluwabamiche Ayonwole, who was kidnapped and raped, and eventually her body with missing parts was discovered on the Kata Bridge in Lagos. That incident occurred. Now, there's a headline here saying, BRT driver raped me after taking sex enhancer, says witness. The trial is ongoing at the Lagos High Court sitting at the Tafawa Balewa Square yesterday. And interestingly, the first prosecution witness was led in examination in chief by the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. In other words, the Attorney General is leading the prosecution of this case, which is very significant.
It's a very good development.
In the first case, it was a man, a pastor, who had told his members of followers that they should get ready for rapture, which apparently was going to be the end of the world. And they all, believing in him, got prepared for it. And apparently, since the war has not ended, he's now being held for a spurious claim, and that's why probably he's being prosecuted. But for the other second case, the family of the passenger on the BRT bus had said that the driver is a worker and a responsibility of Lagos State government. Therefore, they didn't feel comfortable that Lagos State government was going to prosecute their own staff. So they wanted their own lawyer to prosecute the man for the rape. Apparently, the Lagos State did not subscribe to that, and the Attorney General of Lagos State has now forwarded the case, and it's now the driver is now being prosecuted for that case. So that is the development as far as that is concerned. But the other development has been related to petrol queues that suddenly surfaced by late Sunday evening, and up till now is persisting, especially in the Federal Capital Territory and surrounding states of Niger and Nasarawa states. And the NNPC says that it is due to what they describe as the holidays of the Salah, which created a gap between movement of commodities from depots to filling stations. So petrol at the depots, but no petrol at filling stations. So
when you had the Christmas holidays and the Easter holidays, did you have fuel scarcity?
Okay. So the irony of it all is that these holidays were anticipated. Long-term planning will have taken care of the shortfall of movement of petrol between depot and stations. So somehow, they are now saying that currently we have 2.3 billion of petrol liters that can last us for 43 days. But the gap is that there is now a problem moving it from depot to the filling station.
I just want to understand this problem they're talking about, because during the period, the festive period, we had enough sufficient fuel, nationwide. So what is the gap we're talking about? We just had just a 2 days holiday, and some of these petrol tanker drivers, I think, also work on weekends. Right. So, and not all of them are involved with the Salah celebration. So, what must have affected the supply chain?
Well, the excuse is that because of the public holiday, probably the tanker drivers took time off to have their Salah celebration, and so there was a gap between movement.
But that's why I asked the question earlier. We had the Christmas holiday.
Yes.
We had the Easter holiday.
Easter even came before Salah.
Precisely. So, did you have scarcity at that time? And as Kenya was asking, how could you have a disruption in your supply chain? I read another excuse, namely that the bridging sums had not been paid, and that is about 500 billion naira. That's not NNPC's business. That's the business of the Petroleum Equalization Fund. So what is the real reason? Why we just keep hearing excuses?
Why should it be affecting the FCT and surrounding states? Why should that be? Because other parts of the country are not at present, having any issue with the commodity.
It's simple. It means that the depot there along Diko in the outskirts of Diko there, where they are supposed to move the commodity into FCT, is where the problem is. And so they couldn't move the product from those depots to the city.
You see, the issue is people should be in a position to plan their businesses and their movements and logistics without recourse to the panic of having to queue up at the filling station. And even those stations that have products, once there's a whiff of scarcity or shortage of supplies, they immediately shut down. And you don't have officials of what used to be called the DPR, which is now the authority, that's the downstream and midstream regulatory authority. You don't have them going around the filling stations to see that, look, you have supplies in your dump. Why are you not selling? So hoarding immediately gets in. By Sunday, those boys selling in jerry cans, we're already having prime locations at the pump head, filling in jerry cans at a premium, and then go back to the roadside to be selling.
It has become a business for the owners of filling stations,
especially
the attendants, right? Some sell from 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. They'll sell to those hawkers. Right. The next day, you see fuel around the filling station, people hawking fuel around the filling station, yet there's no one that can dispense from the pump. So invariably, it means that those persons who are selling who are the hawkers, bought it overnight.
Well, at the aviation level, the airline operators went into a meeting. The speaker and deputy speaker sat in the meeting, and they had a 4-point agreement. And apparently, the first agreement was first of all to call off their impending withdrawal of services. After that has been done, they got an agreement in the second instance, which was to say that marketers now have a choice in the sense that they have to appoint their own agents who will now be given licenses to import petrol. But in the meantime, the governor of the central bank said that there are 6 million liters of aviation fuel, Jet A1 fuel, available, and at a cost of about 480 naira per liter for them. And that helped save the situation, because they had aviation fuel had risen from 190 naira to over 700 naira, and the operator said they couldn't continue at that rate. So for now, in the long run, the agreement is that they can appoint their own license agent who eventually will be granted licenses to import a Jet A1 fuel on their behalf. That has solved the problem. There was this other...
but I see, before we... everything importation. I think part of the products that Kaduna Refinery was designed to refine is jet fuel. The Jet A1 fuel, the so-called DPK, and so on and so forth. But we can't we can't go on like this without having the distortions in our macroeconomic environment. And we can't premise everything on importation.
You're
Period.
stating the obvious. You know, in fact, it's late in the day, so to speak. You know, because as you and I speak, we said we were on this program beginning of this year or even last year. We were talking about refineries here and there, and nothing is coming out of that. So why don't we just forget it and face the reality?
Well, we are hoping that
import.
the 33-month deadline promised for Warri Refinery to come mainstream will meet that deadline. And if that is succeeded, it means Warri is likely to come mainstream by at least middle of next year. So hopefully that will put an end to it.
We have to end it here, really. You know, that's a topic for another day, really. When you bring up the issue of refinery, it usually hurts, you know, to know that a nation that is endowed, you know, with oil and gas, yet we cannot refine these products for our own local consumption. So at this point, I would like to thank you, Bayo, for being here this morning. Yes, we'll see you again tomorrow. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation on the issue of political leadership in Nigeria. Do stay with us.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA's network service. As a prompt for our conversation this morning, which is a continuation of what we began yesterday, namely the concept of leadership, let's listen into excerpts from the first installment of the conversation put together by Oyemi Ajayi.
So I think it's time to hold our leaders accountable. My view and my opinion to the youth is this. You were youth yesterday, you're growing old today. Stop making excuses about, you know, we could have done this if our leaders did that. Hold leaders accountable. When you're picking people for highest office, yes, people change, people evolve every day. But unfortunately, we can't take the risk. Those we pick as leaders for the highest office must have proven themselves.
The other thing we need to look at in deciding who we should elect is ethics. I mean, leadership has ethics. It has values. Now, a leader that comes and is not telling you the plan to improve the lot of the people going forward doesn't have the interest of the people at heart.
It is when you have, you know, a confident group of people as citizens in a country, exposed to different ideas, with the ability to reason and judge issues and weigh matters. That is when you can have a viable country that will be able to hold, you know, the leaders accountable. So I think that, you know, this situation we are in demands that we immediately prioritize education of Nigerians.
There shouldn't just be a link between citizenship and leadership. There must be a bond that is not easily broken between the two segments of the society. Leadership should be about problem solving, identifying the problems of the society, and creating ideas, visions, utilizing available resources to solve the problems.
The military authoritarian rule produced the set of political leaders that we have today. If you look at the governors between 1999 to 2003, majority of them were commissioners of finance or information under military administration, or they were senior special advisors to governors on finance and other matters. And so these are the set of people, leaders that we imbibe in a new democratic enterprise, a new democratic setting, but with values and orientation of dictatorial tendencies. So these are governors and rulers who were not in tune or attuned with democratic values.
All right, we just have to continue the conversation. And with us here in the studio to examine or re-examine this topic, which we started yesterday, we have Dr. Ike Neliako. Ike Neliako is a fellow of Nigerian Institute of Public Relations and Executive Secretary and of the Nigerian Prize for Leadership. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, friends. Good morning, Nigerians.
And also with us in the Abuja studio here is Mr. Suji Eniade. He is the Director General of the Citizen and Leadership Training Center here in Abuja. We're glad to have you again.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you are based in Jos, I believe.
One of our schools is in Jos.
Okay.
Actually, we have 10 schools spread across Nigeria, yes.
Okay.
The headquarters is here in Abuja.
Abuja, yes. Okay, the more famous one is the one in
Hills,
in Jos.
in Jos, yes.
Jos.
And the C school in Lagos, Apapa.
All right, that's interesting.
Yes.
Now, also joining us via Zoom, a professor of public sector management and governance, is the Dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies at the University of Abuja, Professor Gabriel Morty. Professor Morty, pleasure to have you this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning to Nigerians.
Okay, and from our Ibadan studios, there's a public affairs analyst, Mercy Balogun, who is joining this conversation. Mercy Balogun, pleasure to have you this morning.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, and here in the Abuja studios, we have Hamzat Lawal, is the Chief Executive of Connected Development, one of the co-conveners of the Not Too Young to Run movement. Hamzat, we are pleased to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. Of course, we know what the situation is at the moment. Politics is already in the air, and that's of a very big concern, because of political uncertainties that we are looking forward to. And it behooves on us to bring up the topic of this nature, to be able to do a proper assessment of those who have indicated interest to run the affairs of this government. I want us to begin with Professor via Zoom, Corrector Gabriel Morty. Let's get your own concept of leadership. What is leadership all about, and what does it connote in the real sense of it?
Yeah, thank you so very much. Leadership involves influence. And everything about leadership is how you can influence other people, carry them along, provide a vision, and guide those people you are leading towards the fulfillment of that vision. And that vision has to do with the needs of the people. What do the people need? What are they aiming for today, tomorrow, and in the next 10, 15 years? So when you are able to provide a vision for the people, a vision that includes their welfare, a vision that includes their security, a vision that includes their livelihood, and you are able to influence them and carry them along and provide the necessary guidance, you are providing leadership. But if you are on your own, facing your own selfish interests, that will not be the type of leadership we are looking for. So in other words, we are looking for leadership that has integrity. Integrity in the sense that we can trust you, because governance, leadership is based on trust. If the people cannot trust you, it is difficult for them to follow you, make the sacrifices that are necessary so that you can accomplish the goals you want to accomplish. And then you must be accountable to the people, because whatever you are doing on behalf of the people is for them. It is not for you. And so they need to know. You must be open or transparent with them. You must be able to let them know at every point what you are doing, the problems and the challenges you are facing. And that is when you have their buy-in. And so that is the type of leadership. The third element I'm thinking about is the element of empathy or emotional intelligence. When you are working with people and on behalf of people, there are issues that they are facing, and you must be able to empathize with them. You must be able to sympathize with them. You must be able to feel how they feel and connect with them in such a way and manner that even if you don't have immediate solutions to their problem, they will be able to trust you and know that eventually all of you are likely going to get a solution to what you are looking for. So in my own view, I think leadership involves a moral burden. And that moral burden has to do with integrity, accountability, transparency, and empathy or emotional intelligence so that you can carry the people along to fulfill the mission you have for them.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Motti. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. My next question would be, does Nigeria face a leadership challenge? And if so, why? Dr. Neleko.
Nigeria faces very, very serious leadership challenge. And the reason is not very difficult. Okay, look at it from this angle. You know, many times people who are in the economic sector talk about consumption versus production. And we think that it's only in that area of manufacturing, economics issues, and so on and so forth. But you see, unfortunately, we have built a nation on the foundation of consumption and not production. We have not deliberately participated in any way structurally to create and to produce leaders. We have been producing people that take offices, take positions, but are not prepared to lead. And leadership is so fundamental. I'm happy that you started by asking the prof the concept and the essence of leadership. And for me, leadership is that fundamental process that gives direction and delivers the right result. And things like this don't just happen. You must have to be strategic in building your leaders. We have not done that in this country. Until 5 years ago, nobody was discussing this issue you're discussing today. What have we been having? Maybe I'm appointed a minister. I'll go and pick somebody as an SA or a PA and so on. And then people add to recommend them to me based on their knowledge of such people. And these guys come to work with me. They have different orientations. I have not been able to groom them to work with me. So you find out that at the end of the day, we have people who are occupying positions, but they are not leaders. At the best, they are managers. And managers are not leaders because they have two fundamental roles to play in any organization. So I think that the reason why it has become so, and unfortunately, what you garbage in most cases is what you garbage out. Because we have not taken the pains to grow young people to come to a place of leadership. What we are having today is a product of what we designed 30 years ago. That's why I began from the point of production and consumption. If you don't produce, you will not have good product to consume. You will keep importing because that is the mindset that you have. And let me just give you a simple example. In 2019, when a few distinguished Nigerians, led by Professor Anya Anya, decided that this matter has become so fundamental because they have worked across board 30 years, 35 years in service, and they discovered that the challenge is leadership. They came together to set up the Nigerian Prize for Leadership. The first thing they did was to engage a team of very distinguished Nigerians to work on what we call leadership barometers. How do we even measure leadership? How do we measure people that come to office? How do we determine what followers should look at in their leaders? We were shocked that some of the things that we used to think that this is what followers look up to. And this team was chaired by no less a person than the late Professor Ayo Ibidapobe. He led the team with Dr. Sarah Alade, Engineer Mansour Ahmed, Dr. John Momo, to do this work. And they came out with 9 solid leadership barometers. They went further to divide it into 2, causative and derivatives. In other words, you have something that will cause something to happen. So, for a leader, number 1 issue, which we have not planted into the mindset of those who are grooming for leadership, is that you must have vision. The leader gives direction. If you don't know where you are going, why should I follow you? So they felt that this is the first fundamental issue. Number 2, creativity and innovation. You must have the capacity to look at things differently from where it was. What is creativity? Adding value. You must add value to your operating environment. What is innovation? Doing it in a new way, even in adding value. Number 3, character. Most times we talk about integrity, but by the time we went into the depth of integrity, we decided that it is better to separate integrity because so many things come under integrity. So we said character. Number 4, competence. Now, a man of integrity must have character and competence. But most times we emphasize character and leave out competence. That's why when you go and say this man is a man of integrity, you go and carry him and put him somewhere because he's a man of integrity. He may not steal your money, but he may never give you leadership. And this is what we have everywhere. So we must separate character from competence to now get the real value that we are looking for. The 5th one, sacrifice. Our leaders must understand that when you accept to take a responsibility, sacrifice becomes key. These are the causative factors. And unless these causative factors are in place, you will not get the right derivatives that you expect from a leader. And what are these things? 4 of them. 1, impact on society. Measure a leader based on the impact that he has made in his society, so that you will determine whether he has done well or he has not done well. Secondly, governance. Somebody talked about ethics. Corporate governance, individual governance, the governance of your person, your mindset, your mentality, everything about governance. How do you adopt to the principle of ethics and values? These are the governance issues. And then role modeling and mentoring. We have not deployed this as part of our system. And finally, this is particularly about Nigeria, diversity and inclusion. This is one of the profound things that we brought out. A leader who does not have a diversity mindset and a mindset of inclusivity has no business in leadership. He can be a good manager because a manager uses what is around him to get result. But a leader goes beyond getting result and prepares people to deliver on a matter on a sustainable basis. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That's a good background, you have laid, leading us into the 9 leadership barometers, that was an outcome of a particular research, carried out. But I hope that's going to be too academic, so that we'll begin to narrow it down to a point where we begin to understand the real leadership and how dire, the challenge is in Nigeria as a nation. Let me bring in the younger generation of Nigerian, Mr. Hamzat Lawal. You've listened to Dr. Neliako, and the expose is a clear indication that perhaps we are not structurally planning to produce leaders. And therefore, what we have today are people who found themselves in positions of authority, and of course, they cannot give leadership. Now, what's your own understanding of it all, and how should the younger generation of Nigerians key into this? Because you are the future of this nation.
Well, thank you. And talking about the future of Nigeria, the future is now. And for me, I believe that we must embrace intergenerational dialogue and equity, where younger people and older people would see themselves as partners towards progress. I think that for me, the foundation starts from education, not just the academic facility where you get educated, but what other extracurriculum activities are provided for you to engage in. And I can use myself as an example. The Boy Scout of those days prepares you for leadership, because the motto of the Boy Scout is be prepared. I joined the Scout movement as a Cub Scout and grew through the ranks as a Scout leader, both in primary school and in secondary school. And that exposure prepared one for the challenge of the future. I also know that we had the youth parliament at that time. And then we had the children parliament, we had the youth parliament, and then we had the youth council that prepares young people and provide an opportunity where we can network, where we can get more exposure. For me, I think that in Nigeria today, and I agree with all the speakers, I think we need to look inward and we need to look at homegrown initiative. How can we solve our own problems using our own ideas and our own solution? Leadership for me is not a rocket science. Leadership for me, it's about taking responsibility, owning up to those responsibilities, and managing varieties of resources, not just financial resources, but also human capital resources, but most importantly, also mobilizing resources. Leaders are meant to identify and also build other leaders. If you're a leader and you're not building a leader and also planning transition, because I think, yes, I'm glad I mentioned the word transition. I think that we've not been deliberate about transitional leadership. If you're in a position of power and authority or you occupy public office, one of your biggest worries is to look at what would become my legacy when I leave office, and how do I transition this knowledge, this experience to a much younger person so that we can have a long-term vision. Today in Nigeria, we only look at the low-hanging fruits. We don't plan the next 50 years. We don't talk about the next 100 years. We don't look at how can we invest and what kind of investment do we need? What kind of capacity gap do we have? What are the researches that are available? Because I believe that different sectors must play a critical role as we try to nip the bug and, fill in that leadership gap. I also believe strongly that my generation is a solution-driven generation. Because a lot of time, a lot of people look at us and say, we're the problem of Nigeria. No, how much have you invested in our generation? It's just a few of us that was lucky to get as much education and exposure. Because when you also look at the education, if you only have education and you don't have exposure, even if you have the education and exposure and you don't have the opportunity to actually to showcase your talents and contribute towards nation building, then you will just be, you probably all this investment and resources would just go to waste. So for me, I believe my generation is a solution-driven generation, but most importantly, we must start to encourage, we must start to embrace intergenerational equity and dialogue, where you would see that my generation is bringing value, where you see us as partners towards progress, where we can stand, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, to build the Nigeria of our dream. And what is our collective vision and value? Because when you talk about value, as an individual, yes, we have our value, but what is the Nigerian value system? What is the Nigerian collective dream and vision that ties and binds all of us together? And we need a leader that thinks, thinks beyond all of this and mobilizes and brings us together and organizes, because beyond mobilization, you must organize and you must continue to educate and encourage people.
All right, Hamza Lawal, thank you very much. Now, over to our Ibadan Network Center, where we earlier introduced Mercy Balogun. Mercy Balogun, you listened to the other guests. How do you frame the leadership challenge that Nigeria faces?
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm so glad to be here. After hearing what everybody has said, it's wonderful. And for me, when it's come to leadership, I'm very passionate because we're not only talking about leaders, we're talking about true leadership. We can have leaders in different angles, but when we're talking about true leadership, this it can be very, it can be very dicey. But leadership for me, when you ask me that, what are my expectations of a leader? A true leadership is not about control, number one. It's about service. And as a leader as well, it's not about power, it's about empowerment. A leader should be able to empower, and a leader should have purpose, passionate vision why you want to be in the office. Everybody wants to say, okay, I want to be a leader. I know what I want to do. The question is this: why do you want to be a leader? What do you want to impart? We've seen many leaders in Nigeria. We've seen many things. We've seen many of our great leaders, what they have left behind. Some of us were the product of it. Even when I'm talking about Shiva Obafemi Awolowo, look at that years back. Up till now, we're still talking about him. Those are the leaders that even years and years, ancients to come, people will still talk about them. So when you are a leader, you have to be able to leave something. You have to be able to impact the next coming generation. You have to be able to listen to what people are saying. These days, we have many selfish leaders. People go into the position because they just want the position. They don't care about what is happening around. And this another angle that I'm going to talk about is this. If you put somebody that have this true leadership character, if you put them in an office, trust me, we will have a great nation. But if you put somebody that just have a political mind in an office, a politician, what you will do is like, how do I secure a seat? How do I get a vote? But as a leader, you don't think about that. You're thinking about, how do I empower? Empowerment. How do I change around me? How do I leave something for the generation? How do I relate with the people? What are the people? What are the needs? Everybody has been talking about it. What do we need? It's not what I need as a leader. What do people need? Ask any good leader, any true leader. Okay, tell me, what is your passion? Before you vote, before you say, okay, this is the person I want to be in the position, ask them. It's not about infrastructure. It's not about, yeah, that one is good, road and everything. But ask them, what is your plan for my family? What about the future of my children? What did you have in place for them? What is your purpose? We're talking about empathy. Can you feel me? Because we have to be real. I'm not a politician. I'm not too much into all politics. But I know as a citizen, I know what I want. I know how I want the nation to be like. I know what the younger generation are talking about. And I'm always saying this. We can all sit here and talk about the leadership. The change starts with us. I'm a leader in my own way. Everyone here, we are all leaders. What are we doing? Because it starts from home. We put people that they cannot even manage their home. We put them in the leadership. You cannot manage one wife and maybe few children. And then we put you in a place for you to manage a whole nation. What do we think it will happen? The charity begins at home. I'm a leader. Every one of us, in everywhere we are, in your workplace, in the church, anywhere you find yourself, you are a leader. And what are we actually doing? How are we imparting this generation? How are we imparting our own circle? In your employment, even when you are not at home, there's somebody like me that, okay, you are abroad. How do you represent Nigerians? If you say I'm in Nigeria, there's something the way they look at us. How do we change that? Yes, we are trusting our leaders. They will be able to, at least, some integrity will come into the office. And we too, we need to help them. we need to do our own side as well. We need to contribute. And then in picking whoever that want to be our leaders, we have to look beyond what they look like. What is the vision? People hardly talk about that. What is the vision? Why do I want to vote for you? If you have a vision, if you have the heart for people, it shows in the way you carry yourself and things that you have done before now. It's not what you're doing now. What have you done before? How have you impacted the younger generation? What have you contributed to the economy? What is your passion? What can we see that you have done already until now? Because it's not rocket science. We need to see. Everybody loves to blame everyone. You. But whereas the change starts with me. We have to start it. We have to break it down. Because when you're thinking, they said, okay, we have elephants in the room. How do you deal with that? We have to cut it into pieces. How do we start? The change starts with me. It starts with all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you indeed, Mercy Balogu. We'll get back to you. But now let's return to the studio here where we have Mr. Suji Eniade. Well, a number of issues has been raised, really, and beautiful comments, made by other speakers. And considering our political history, will it be right to say that we are where we are today in terms of development because of not very good leadership, throughout all these years? Now, yesterday, you were part of a panel yesterday, and we also discussed the issue of the relationship between followership and leadership.
Yes.
We all agreed that leadership and followership are, two sides of a coin, right? How does followership exert influence on someone's leadership style?
Let me start with the statement that leadership emerges from followership. And for a nation to get it right, to meet all the indices and barometers Doc has mentioned, it's a process. A nation is an organic entity. It grows, shed weight, gain weight. It's organic. What do we do? And there are some basic questions, sir, that I've noted. Do we have the right institutions in place to drive leadership growth in Nigeria? Do we have the right structure to drive emergence of good leaders in Nigeria? Leaders just don't come overnight. They are not from the skies. They are from within the society. They must have been trained. They must have the experience. They must be exposed from within. Do we have the right laws to guide emergence of leadership? Then, do we apply the right resources to train leadership from within? These are the challenges. Because when you talk of leaders, it's as if we are talking about those who are self-made. Whereas leadership within an entity, within a nation, must be the concern of the nation. Let's take, for example, in Israel, or let's take Singapore. Right from the university, there's what we call poaching. Poaching by the public sector, poaching by the private sector. They go into the universities to look for the best trains, to tap them. Poaching by the intelligence agencies, poaching by the blue chip companies. They do that right from the universities. And they inject them, they include them within the system, and they allow them to grow within that system with a view to attaining the leadership at the top of that organization. Do we have that in place in Nigeria? Within the public sector? Maybe within the private sector it thrives, but within the public sector, do we have it? So it's very easy to talk about leadership and throw the responsibility on individuals. But what efforts is the country, Nigeria, making to groom, to train for good leaders to emerge and sustain that process? That is my own concern for now.
But sometimes you could have a good leader, but he may not find himself at the echelon where he'll be perhaps elected to either be a president or governor or even a National Assembly.
You are right. For a leader to have that opportunity, there must be that spirit of participation. Some people are very well endowed, good with the attributes he has mentioned, but they felt, why should I be there?
That's how the wherewithal.
The wherewithal, and that is where the problem of social inclusion. Because many people, many sectors, many segments of the society are being excluded from participation in public affairs, most especially the leadership role we're talking about. If the resources are not there, the person will sit back. How do you expect a retired civil servant who went home with a gratuity of maybe less than 10 million naira to now go to join a political party and with what we are seeing all over the place, says he wants to participate?
Okay.
So the exclusion challenges is there.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the comments that you have made. We know that leadership is actually a broad subject matter, and there are many strands from the comments that you have made. I just, when we look back, sometimes we have a lot of nostalgia about what used to happen in our country. The Director General of the Leadership Citizen Leadership Training Center was talking about poaching in the universities. It used to happen in Nigeria. Yeah. There will be notices on the boards, with companies that are coming to recruit, and then companies also offered scholarships to students, and then you wrote your civil service exams if you were interested in all of that. It used to happen in the country, but let's, so that we can begin to narrow these things down, because before we know it, we are pressed for time. We know that there are certain institutions and establishments that continue to groom their leaders, that continue to invest in their members for leadership positions. Take the military, for instance, or other services. Take the business environment. For you to thrive as a business, you must have the right leaders in place. And Dr. Neleku was saying managers are not leaders, but there is a leadership concept in management, in being a manager. The business environment, if you don't grow, if you don't innovate, of course you peter out and your business ends there. Our chief concern obviously has to do with political leadership and the impact that it has on all other sectors. And my question is going back to Dr. Neleku. I liked the production matrix example that you gave, that it is, if you don't produce, this is what you end up with. Or if your inputs in the production process are substandard, then the outcomes you will get will be precisely what we have. Now, why have we allowed this to be upon us? Is it that those in other sectors of the economy have always felt that, no, politics is filthy, politics is that. And then in some cases, we have allowed the gangsters and then those who are incompetent to be in charge, to seize the space and continue to dictate in a manner that impacts on the rest of society in a negative way. If that is so, how can we begin to address it?
We did not start transformation early. We began the process of our leadership from the mindset of transaction. And what transaction does for you is a mercantile approach to everything. So by the time we began to realize what you are talking about, the train has left the station. We had a long period of military rule. By the time we came into, let's even look at our current experience that started in 1999. Who were those that came forward? The same military class. They have made so much money. They have cultivated so much influence. They have built solid network. If they did not endorse you, you will not be considered as worthy. How many Nigerians know? I'm sorry to say it here, but how many Nigerians know that it was the military that produced the first president of Nigeria in 1999. It was not Nigerians. It was a conspiracy that was hatched by 5 people and delivered to us. And we accepted it because they had become so powerful. And they said, one of us should succeed us. And after one of us, another one of us should succeed us. In fact, it was a 3-layer concept. But unfortunately, when the first person got there, he kicked the ladder and others couldn't continue. So we have got a situation. I'm sorry. Well, if you want to know more of this, get a copy of 7 Conspiracies of Power. Because these are the things we looked at for about 12 years. How have we fared as a people? So back to the production consumption matrix. He gave an example, and you alluded to it. In those days, people, while in schools, they will come for you and engage your services. All you needed to do was to work hard. So there was an incentive. Work hard and get recognized, and you get placed. But what happened? Along the line, our production capacity could not be sustained. So we began to consume more than we were producing. And at the end of the day, we are no longer in a position, because you see, it's simple. If you have 5 companies and each one needs a 5 manager, a 5 admin officer, a 5 public relations officer, isn't it 15? 15 times 5, we give you, I hope my mathematics is 75, all right? So I will come to universities, I am looking for 75 best brains so that they can fit into my company as a producer. Along the line, if I keep producing, I will be multiplying. But by the time I stop producing and I go into consumption, I begin to import. I begin to go into other things that are not helping my productivity. I stop expanding. Meanwhile, productivity was going on in population. People were still going to bed. People were still marrying. So we produced 200 million people, but we did not produce 200,000 companies that could now assimilate those people, that our productive capacity as human beings, our biological production was virile and very strong, all right? But our economic production capacity, our leadership production capacity could not match our biological production capacity. What do you expect? Confusion. That's where we are today. So if we begin now, and that's why I must pay compliment to the NTA and CLTC, because when we started in 2019, we ran to them and said, let's partner. Our brother Hamza talked about networking. We ran to them. We ran to NTA, and we said, look, this is what we are doing. Let's come together and take this subject matter very seriously. And indeed, he said, we will partner with you. And they have remained consistent and committed to that partnership so that we can begin afresh to regroom. And we have done this now for 3 years, and we could see the result. Some of those that have been trained under the leadership ambassadors that NPL is doing are excelling in various areas. People call us to say, please, can you get me somebody that will do this? And we deploy people to them. And they come back to say, thank you very much. But that is somebody's deliberate work, deliberate hard work, and so on. Let me stop at this point.
We are stopping at this point after raising very crucial issues. Because we're talking about the production of leaders. There's no foundation for that from all indications and from what you have enunciated. Let's return to Professor Gabriel Motu once more. Sir, you've listened to other speakers, right? And because we have graduated from the concept of leadership to really the challenge of leadership in this country. Dr. Neliako, pointed out the fact that there is no structural plan to develop or produce leaders in this country. And he has, according to him, perhaps he's late in the day, but we're not going to give up as a nation. So tell us what you think should be the right direction to take at the moment, because we know now that there is a lack of good leadership in Nigeria. And if that is the case, then it means that we have less leaders, coming up, from the younger generation of Nigerians. So what should be the right step to take this time around to see whether we can, ameliorate, this situation by way of grooming new and good leaders that will, of course, handle the affairs of this country going forward?
Yeah, thank you so very much. Yeah, I think eloquently we have placed it very clearly. We have found out that the issue in Nigeria is that, one, we do not mentor others to take over when we are in positions of authority or positions of power. And so we are not producing. Indeed, it is not that we don't know people who are competent, because almost all of us have mentioned this issue of competence, because it is what makes you put resources together, whether natural resources, whether capital resources or human resources, to be able to put into practicality what the people need. So that competence is very important, apart from the other ingredients of leadership we have been talking about, like character and others. However, it seems as if what we do in this country is people, when they're about to leave office or they are in office, they want to bring in people on the basis of patronage. And this patronage or patrimonial issues of leadership have been a big bend. It is as if my level of competence is 45% and I'm leaving office, I better bring somebody who will perform at 30% so that they will say, oh, he didn't do as well like I did. But just like we have been talking about production, if you want production and sustainability, you don't bring people below par. You bring people above and over what you have done so that they can sustain, innovate, and even do better than you had done before. So what I think we should be doing in this country is a deliberate policy to connect and network and partner with a lot of the institutions that are available in the country. For instance, the TED Fund has set up at the University of Abuja, for instance, a center of leadership excellence. Now, these are centers where you can bring in young people, you can bring in people who are at the intermediate level of leadership, train and groom, and let them know what are the issues about Nigeria, what are the challenges about Nigeria, what are the problems about Nigeria, how do we need to be inclusive in Nigeria, how do we need to manage diversity in this country. And this is not something that will just come overnight. It is a deliberate attempt letting them know that this is our country. And in the next 10, 14, 15 years, when you groom people like that, give them opportunity to partner even when you are grooming them, like internship and others. By the time they get to that position and you allow them the opportunity to come in, we will have a leadership culture of transition and succession that will help. But if we begin to continue to do the patronage we do, oh, this man was loyal to me, has no basis of competence, or somebody comes in and I say, okay, I was a governor, they felt I didn't do very well, so you go and look for another someone below your par, you bring in. I think that has been the issue. We need to mentor, we need to groom, we need to develop, and this has to be deliberate. And this has to be a Nigerian project, not just individuals coming in here and there. And just like we have agreed, there are many organizations that can help us do what we are talking about, and that will help us. I think that is a way forward as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Oh. All right, Professor Moti, thank you very much. I saw you struggling there to get rid of that call that was coming in while you were on air. Thank you very much, Professor Moti, and indeed the other guests. In the meantime, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And let's bring in Mr. Hamzat Lawal once more. I know my colleague Kinsley has a question for him, but what I'd like to ask him is how should the youth be engaged? You are a co-convener of Not Too Young to Run movement. Therefore, you have exhibited some level of leadership qualities by so doing, and you should understand how the youth could contribute to the leadership of this country at any given strata of administration. Kinsley also has a question for you.
Well, Kieran, I mean, that's an important point to raise. But I was just wondering, from the experience of the youth, Kieran, Hamzat, look, you say yours is a solution-driven generation. And obviously, the earlier generations have been part of the challenge that the country is dealing with today. How do we transition from the baggage, if you like, of the older generation to the newer generation, ensuring intergenerational transfer of positive attributes?
I think first, the solution and the transition must be political. But let me piggyback to participation or engagement. And one of the speakers talked about the importance of participation. And for me, this participation or engagement is at different level. Not every one of us would run or can run for political office, elective political office. But we are all from a ward. We're all from a local government. We have representative, senatorial district, and a state. And I think that as young people, we must start to engage in our various wards. Because if you look at the leadership process in Nigeria, political leadership process, it starts from the ward level. So I've observed meetings at the ward level. And when I sit with these people and listen to their conversation, and then vis-a-vis my exposure, there's a huge disconnect with what happens at the ward level, at that local level, to what we aspire to become as a country. And I think that we can continue to complain as young people on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, if we don't engage at that level. Because from the ward level, you go to the local government level, and then you come to the state level. And those people who we think they're local, uneducated, unexposed, are the ones that inform who becomes delegates and then elect, when they have indirect primaries in political parties, elect people to become National Assembly members, senators, governors, and even presidents. And as you direct this question to the youth, I think there's also a misconception about youth, because we've seen 50, 60-year-old people referred to as youth or call themselves youth. Under the African Youth Charter, from 18 to 35 is youth. Interestingly, Nigeria have a youth policy, and the new youth policy says 18 to 29. I turned 35 in March this year. And I said, nobody should call me a youth again, because where we got it wrong was the fact that there's a generation that I call the forgotten generation. I'm really sorry to people who belong to the age between 40 to 55, 60, because that gap have left this generation to continue to refer themselves as youth. And then they don't want to transition to become full-grown adults. But I think that, and I'm going back to how I started, our solution, the problem, if you deep dive into the problem, is a political problem. Now the solution must be political and partisan. I think we shy away from politics, and that's why we would continue to complain and agonize. No, we must now organize and mobilize to educate. And why I say political is everything in Nigeria now is political. All the decisions that affect you and I are political. So why are we shying away from politics? I do not believe politics is dirty. It is the current players that are dirty. If we have people in businesses, in civil society, in private sector, in the media, join politics, I think we can start getting it right. Why we got it wrong years ago was because a lot of people shied away from politics, and then the political managers who we now elected as leaders became more selfish rather than selfless, and then turned the tides of our nation building and our political journey and history. So you and I must become really political, because see, either you live or die today in Nigeria. It's politics that decide it. Either you get a job or you get taxed. Everything is political. So we cannot say we cannot be political. So for me, as a young person, I'm not a youth. As a young person, we must engage in the political process. We all cannot get elected. But someone here, one of the amazing speakers said, we know the people with the values. We know the people with the capacity. So why are we shying away from engaging and ensuring these people actually emerge and even get elected?
Well, if you're asking that question, it's one of the questions I put earlier here, which has to do with the capacity to participate. Now we're talking about buying forms, over 100 million or 40 million to buy a form to either become a president or a governor, even House of Reps, even down to House of Assembly at the state level. You still have to go up to 5 million or thereabout. How many persons who possess the quality that we're talking about have the resources to raise that kind of fund, to run? That is part of the problem that we have joining politics. Kingsley and I can't join politics, of course, because we don't have the resources to do that. Although that we may be interested.
No. That's a defamatory statement to make. I mean, Kira, as I'm sitting here, my support group is at the gate. I've just been informed that they want to deliver my form. They want to deliver my form to me. Yes, I'm still on air, please. I'm still on air. Wait for me. That's my support group with my form.
And they're raising money for you.
Yeah,
they're raising money to
get it.
Okay, it's just to pick up the form and pass it to. So that's the issue. Mercy, what should be the solution? Let's think of how to ameliorate the situation. What should be the solution now, with respect to how Nigeria can get to a level where we now say there are leaders at every strata of government? What should be the right step to take? And what should be the contribution of the women folk in all of this?
Oh, thank you. Well, one of the solutions, I'll say, we have to start mentoring. Is very, very important, because this generation that we're living in, especially in Nigeria, is selfish. Many people, they're so selfish. And when you're not passionate about your country, when everything is thought about you, it's difficult for you to look beyond your own space. We need to now, it's time for us now to look beyond where we are. It's time for us now to be compassionate, to see around us, not only to think about me only, because we are all in this together. Nigeria is a great nation. Nigeria, we have gifts, talent, name it, in movie industry, in music industry, in entertainment, in fashion, name it. We have everything that we needed. But one thing that is lacking is that we don't have the great leaders that will expose all that. Many other nations, they don't even have as much as what we have in Nigeria, and they're doing great. Look at Rwanda. Look at even people, all of us now, we love to travel to Dubai. We love to travel to all these places, but most of them, they don't even have as much as we have. It's time for us now, individually, to start that change, like I said earlier on, and to be able to love this nation. One thing I always say this, that when I was growing up in school, we are never taught to actually love our nation, to actually, appreciate what we have, the gifts. Though we have gifts, we have talent, we are not loved. Okay, let me make an example now. For instance, what is happening in Ukraine now? If you are a Nigerian, you are abroad. God forbid, similar thing happen in Nigeria. Would you leave your comfort zone to come and help your nation? That's what I'm talking about. Do we love this nation enough to sacrifice for it to be a better place? Would you? Because I'm hearing it on the news that many people, they're leaving their comfort zone to go back to Ukraine, to go and help the nation. Can we do that for this nation? Because what is the nation giving to you? Because everything always starts from the top. When we're talking about leadership, it starts from the top. The change starts from the top. Yes, but we too, we have to do something to contribute. We have to love this nation. We have to love our coming generation. Because as we are living, the next generation, they're coming. Like the gentleman said earlier on. What are we giving to them? It's easy for us to say, oh, yes, the youth, they're moving mad, they're doing this and all sorts. But the question is this, what are we giving to them? And we're talking about production as well. Because what you sow, you reap. What are we giving into our young ones? When I bring it to the family, you can't say, yes, I'm the head of this family, and you're not giving anything to your family. What do you think it will happen? What you sow, that is what you will reap. It's time for us now to start sowing into the community, to start sowing into our young ones. Maybe most of the adults, maybe it's hopeless. But we cannot give up. Nigeria will be great, but we have to play our part. If you don't play our part, we can be talking, we will be repeating the mess over and over. And that's why I thank God for a program like this. Because I can see that everyone on this panel, everybody is passionate. We know what to do. But our prayer is that the right person is put in the place to do just that and make Nigeria to be proud once again. Because
okay, but Mercy Balogun, thank you very much. Sorry, we need to get the comments of a couple of other guests before it's time up on today's conversation. We have here the DG of the Citizenship and Leadership Training Center, Soji Eniade. We also have here Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Prize for Leadership, Nene. We have Professor Moti, who has just told us about a TED Fund established Center for Excellence, Leadership Excellence. And around the country, Kirian, you have a plethora of institutions and bodies and faculties. But guess what? Our passion amongst particularly the political leadership class is to proceed on a one-week program, maybe in Dubai, maybe at Harvard, maybe at Oxford, and return. In the meantime, we have the facilities right here and the persons right here. Political parties, I don't know how many of them have institutes that are functional. Established them in the past, but they all collapsed. How can we revitalize these institutes or these learning centers and attract them? Because education is a lifelong process. If you say a leader has to have those attributes that you mentioned, Ike, about visioning, you can't be a visionary if you are not educated, if you don't have a broad mind. Lee Kuan Yew, that is still heard, in memory today as the instigator of the movement from the Third World to the First for Singapore, was a very well-read man. So how do we take advantage of pre-existing institutions and getting political actors and political leaders to immerse themselves in the knowledge and faculty of these extant bodies? Dr. Neleku, quickly, and then we'll bring in the Soji.
Well, thank you very much. Very simple. Again, it boils down to consumption. I have seen situations where beautiful training programs are arranged in Nigeria. Less functional training programs arranged in Dubai or elsewhere. People prefer to go there. Why? Because they will earn extra code. It's simply, they will earn extra code. Nobody is going to give you extra code here. So because of extra code, not the content. And guess what? When they now go for this program, they go with their aides because they draw from the public purse. When they get there, they send their aides to go and attend the training on their behalf while they are all over the streets shopping. And then he comes back and signs a report he knows nothing about. And at the end of the day, he's your leader. This would continue to happen because the elite has conspired against the rest of the citizens. It is not enough for them, for for you to be competent. In fact, competence is an anathema. Competence is what makes you not to be qualified. But if you are competent and you are willing to cover interests, then you will be considered. So we have a situation where the elites have come to a point that they have ambushed the system. But in conclusion, and I want to plead with you, Hamza said that he really has some concern for my generation. And I really sympathize for his generation. And the reason is very simple. Any nation that must not invest in its youth is finished. So the earlier we start, the better. I will read just a paragraph from...
Make it a short paragraph.
Yeah.
Take the short paragraph.
The youth represents 7 major things in any nation. 1, the strength of the nation. 2, the wealth of the nation. 3, the face, the image and pride of the nation. 4, the character of successive leadership of the nation. 5, the creativity, intelligence, and the innovation of the nation. 6, the peace of the nation. And finally, the gauge to measure the future of the nation. So this is from 7 conspiracies of power.
Well said. You know, there was a write-up sometime last week, you know, someone was saying that the people who are intending to loot are more in number than those who are looting. So if you're talking about the younger generation coming, some of them already planned that, look, if I get to a position, I have to get wealthy before anything else, because it's part of what we have seen in the political sphere for a while now. I'm just in line with what we're saying, right? And that's why I want to bring another once more on this subject matter. You know, we are actually rounding off the program, but just to make it brief.
Deliberate policies by government focusing on youth. Let's forget about the forgotten generation. Let's focus on the youth now. There must be deliberate policies to drive leadership growth in Nigeria. We have the institutions in place. Citizenship and Leadership Training Center is there. His own organization is there. Prof mentioned an institution in the University of Abuja. These are institutions already in place. But what about the level of patronage of these institutions? There must be deliberate policies by government to ensure that our youth are sent to these organizations.
And deliberate policy by political parties to ensure that their members are also sent to these institutions.
Definitely.
Well, okay, gentlemen and lady, it's here that we call it a day, you know, on this particular edition of the program. We'd like to appreciate all of you for being here this morning. Dr. Ike Neliako, a fellow of Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Executive Secretary and Nigerian Prize for Leadership. Thank you very much for being here this morning. And Mr. Soji Enede, the Director General of the Citizen and Leadership Training Center, Abuja. Thank you also for being here this morning.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. And Vice you have Professor Okelto Gabriel Moti. Prof is also a member of the Maxwell Leadership Certified team member. We appreciate you this morning, sir. Thank you. Mercy Balogu, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you also for being part of our program. Mr. Hamzat Lawal, co-convener of the Not Too Young to Run movement. Thank you indeed for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's take some foreign tidbits before we conclude our program.
All right, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kyrian Umai. Have a great day.